Greetings, family. This is IMAHKÜS Njinga Okofu Ababio, affectionately known as Mama Africa. It's a wonderful day as I sit here with the breeze blowing in my face. I close my eyes and I think about how blessed I am. It's a beautiful day, a real happy new day. So before I fall asleep on y'all, because I've been known to fall asleep, I'll sit down and go to sleep in a minute. So before I fall asleep on y'all, I will take us into chapter 8. Chapter 8, we made it home. We finally, after all of the delays, obstacles, dealing with family that thought we were crazy, unfortunately, we lost our mother. I didn't have an opportunity to see her again. I had made a conscious decision, as my mom and I had talked about it, is that if either one of us went on to the next level, that we would not view the temple that our spirit had dwelled in during our lifetime. So the only memory, or the lasting memory that we would have from one another, would be whatever it is that we were doing the last time we were together. And so my remembrance of my mother the last time we were together was this, with her arms across her chest, pouting, tears running down her fat cheeks, and her saying to me, "Go on then, go on to Africa. You ain't no African." And I tried to talk to her at that time and said, "Ma, but I really gotta go." And she insisted. She was like, go on. So I went. Those are some of the sacrifices that one makes when you decide to make that transition, going from America, or as I call it, America, KKKA. When you leave, unfortunately, most people, many people, especially at that time, thought that, as my kids say, that we'd fallen out of our treehouse. But you leave anyway, you make that sacrifice. The sacrifice of being able to return to the land of your ancestors. The opportunity to be able to reconnect with Mother Africa. And everyone doesn't understand that, but it's okay. Because from 1991 to, where are we, 2024, that's 30 years. I've seen so many people returning home. I've had so many people say that they were inspired to make this sojourn because of the examples that my King Man and I, and Daddy Bongo, and Mama D set before them. We said it was possible, and they believed us. So, enough of that. We made it home. Yes, I was home again. And this time, I was not leaving. Come hell or high water, I was staying. So when we finally returned in October 1990, was it October? No, it wasn't October. When we finally returned, I believe it was, I'm trying to think, was it July 1st? Yeah, it was. When we finally returned in October 1991, our friend and brother Kwajo was most gracious. He met us at the airport with our car, which we had previously purchased from him in 1990 when we originally relocated to Ghana. He drove us to his home in Cape Coast. When we inquired about the color of the car being changed, he said it had begun to rust and he wanted it to look nice for us. Our best Ghanaian friend, all around good guy and man about town, had painted our green Mercedes-Benz another color without our consent. He had removed the license plates and had been using our car as a rent-a-car service. It had been seen by some other friends of ours being driven all over town by some white folks. The truth of the matter, we would soon learn, was that by painting it white, no one would recognize it, or so he thought, for it was originally painted a distinct bluish green with the license plate number 7777, One Africa. But what could we do? The damage was already done. The car had been repainted. We generally stayed with Kwajo and his family, who hosted us during our previous visits to Ghana as we were preparing our exodus from the United States. He was also known to our original group from our first visit in 1987 and thought he was a cool guy. And so did we. Coming home again was joyous and we were all so happy. Sister D, Bongo Shorty, Nana, and I. A dream come true. What we had talked about, prayed about, dreamed about for more than 15 years, had finally materialized. This was Mother Africa, and we were finally back in her bosom. Mother Africa, black, ebony, smoking, rich, green, friendly, historical, and mysterious. And we were right in the center of the earth. Ghana, West Africa, was finally our real home. The first thing I did when we arrived in Cape Coast was to visit the Cape Coast Castle dungeons. Feeling the cool breeze and ruminating about the past, I recall my first visit to Ghana in August 1987. When I re-entered the women's dungeon, after having flown across the watery graveyard of my ancestors, I had become even more of being on a spiritual journey. I had become another destiny soul seeker. Spiritually, I had been awakened. And I knew that I would never be the same again. Ever. The spirit of the land and the spirit of my ancestors took hold of me as I re-entered the Cape Coast Castle dungeons. They were there waiting for me, pulling off my shoes. I slowly and quietly walked on that sacred and historic ground to better commune with them, touching the rough, cold, damp stones of the dungeon walls and looking up at the cavernous ceiling. I felt the darkness closing in on me as I once again pulled up nightmares of being enslaved and dehumanized by strange-looking, dirty pink men. I remembered my ancestors, smelling their musty, sweating bodies and feeling them, hands touching me, caressing me, quieting the anguished flow of my hot tears, warmly and strongly welcoming me home, but forcing me once again to remember how it must have been for them, taken from these shores in the holds of strange, ominous-looking vessels, slave ships that rolled and pitched and swayed in the vast waters of the Gulf of Guinea, that waited to swallow them up quick into the belly of the beast, floating houses of horror. Thousands upon thousands of African men, women, and children stacked side by side and on top, destiny stacked side by side and on top of one another in 24-inch spaces, maybe 5 to 6 feet in length, destined for unknown lands, never to see Africa again. I thought of the millions of our African ancestors who passed through these same doors of no return, forced to undergo the inhuman conditions of disease, filth, torture, and unrivaled cruelties. Some of them committing suicide in transit, preferring death to facing the unknown. Others sick or so weakened from their near starvation resulting from months of forced overland travel and weeks of cramped imprisonment with little food and water, were thrown overboard to the sharks with the rebellious who continued to resist up to the end. You have to excuse me because as I relive some of this, I still get overcome at the memories as I think of what my ancestors had gone through. So I just asked you to give me a few seconds so that I can regroup myself. But then, after 500 years of enslavement in the same strange place, their daughter, my husband, my brethren and sister, one of their many children, had been blessed to return home. And what had we left behind? Everything. Our family, our children, our grandchildren, lifelong friends, and the stress of living in the hellish conditions of many Africans born in the United States and often being a paycheck away from being homeless. For protection from the outside world, we lived behind multi-locked doors with bars and gates at the windows, and fearful of being in the streets of the South Bronx after dark, places where none but the brave or foolish dare trod. Now we were free of that. We were home. But the return home also came with certain conditions, certain expectations from our ancestors. I had been given the task of being one of the gatekeepers for the door of return, for the door of no return, to be there to welcome home those brothers and sisters that would be returning in their numbers. Once again, thanking God and my ancestors, I slowly walked out of the women's dungeon into the daylight, realizing the awesome task that I had been given. I prayed to be able to handle it. Everyone was excited those first few weeks, but for some reason, Sister D was feeling more than a little uncomfortable being in Kojo's house. She didn't like the vibe she was picking up from our host and doubted his sincerity. Additionally, she didn't feel welcome in his home. Relax, we told her. Everything is fine, we assured her continuously. But she didn't feel better until we moved her and Bongo into our little village of Itri, where Nana had been made the Asafahini in 1990. Sister D, or Mama D, as she was now called, was happier living in the village with Bongo. But I missed them so very much and wanted to be where they were. We hadn't come this far to be separated in our homeland. Nana and I would go out often and spend the night with them. But it wasn't the same. The living conditions were very close. The mosquitoes were fierce and giving us a fit. Though not too happily, we were managing. We were also on the lookout for a larger place. Nana and I were still staying at Kwajo's house, making arrangements for the construction of our new house, which was also being handled by our brother, Kojo. Kwajo, Kojo, whatever. He was a rogue. Even though the relationship was getting a little strained, still we managed. It was hard to believe. We had been in Ghana for a month, and it was time to go to the immigration authorities in Accra to extend our visa, one of our many visas, one of our many extensions that we would be required to have in order to stay in the land of our ancestors. Utter nonsense, but we complied. We set out early that morning, about 6 a.m. Everyone was in a jovial mood. This was Bongo and Mama D's first trip to the capital. About 20 miles outside of Cape Coast, we ran out of gas. We traded cars with Brother Kwajo, who had loaned us his car to go to Accra. However, he neglected to put gas in the car, and the tank was empty. But Nana said he faulted himself. He looked at the wrong gauge and should not have assumed that Kwajo had gassed up his ride, even though Nana had gassed up our Benz before giving it to him. But all things being equal, the car ran out of gas in front of a filling station, so all was not lost, I thought. When we rolled into the station, a man waved at us, not understanding what he was saying. Nana got out of the car and went to speak to him. Nana didn't speak the language, so I asked the young man who was moving with us to go with Nana and translate so there would be no misunderstanding. After some discussion, Nana and Tommy, our escort, returned to the gas pump. The gas pump was one of those old-fashioned gallon glass jars where you could see the gas as it filled up from 1 gallon bottle to another. And the number of gallons being pumped in was counted by the attendant using stones, which he put on one side each time the bottle filled up. This was definitely different from the way it was done in the United States. In all, we took in 6 gallons of gas. I suggested to Nana that, honey, we might as well just fill up since we're here, but he refused, stating that he wanted to get the balance in town at a well-known place like the Mobil station, the Shell station. 6 gallons of Taylor's gas would suffice, he said. Anxious to get to Accra, we started out again. 1 mile down the road, the car began to belch, jump, and sputter. Nana suddenly pulled over and we all jumped out of the car because black smoke billowed out of the tailpipe and the car would go no further. What's wrong? I asked Nana. But before he could answer, Tommy spoke up. I think it's the gas. We use diesel fuel, and because they were out of petrol, What? Nana screamed. Diesel fuel? Are you mad? Didn't I tell you petrol? Well, that was not exactly true. What Nana meant and what Nana said were two different things. Nana had used the term gasoline, which does not mean the same thing in Ghana as it does in the United States. Gasoline equates to gas oil, and gas oil translates into diesel fuel. But what really ran up our blood pressure was why, when Tommy admitted that he thought the car did not take diesel fuel, but said nothing as we pumped 6 gallons of diesel fuel into our gas tank. Since Tommy had created the problem, we sent him back to the gas station to get a large plastic container and a hose to draw out the gas oil. In the meantime, some brothers stopped to assist us. Tommy returned with a container. It didn't work. There was a screen separating the gas tank from the gas pipe, which kept out the trash and us. Nana was pacing up and down, mad as 40 Mad Hatters, and as much as I disliked cigarette smoking, I tried to find him a cigarette to hopefully calm his nerves. No luck, no stores, and no one around us smoked or had a cigarette. In the meantime, a real cool brother went down the road and found some rope to tow our car to the next service station 8 miles away. A taxi cab arrived and attempted to pull our car, but no luck. As soon as we got rolling, the tow rope broke. Finally, the ingenuity of our Ghanaian helper got it fixed, and off we went again. A half a mile down the road, the tow rope broke again. We fixed it, and 2 miles down the road, it broke again. A real comedy of errors. When we broke down this time, the same brother that had helped us the first time reappeared, and just in time. He again helped us to secure the car again, and we prepared to leave again, but not before I stopped at a roadside kiosk, a store, to secure cigarettes and a drink to soothe the raging Nana. We finally made it to the fitter's shop, which is what Ghanaians call the repair shop or mechanic. The fitter also could not drain the gas tank without removing the gas tank from the car. Once removed, the gas was drained, the tank washed and reinstalled. Next, the carburetor had to be cleaned. However, the filter had trouble getting the gas tank back into the car. If it wasn't enough drama for one day, suddenly out of nowhere, the wind started kicking up, dark clouds rolled in from the east, and the heavens opened up. Showers of blessings. The rain lasted only a short time while the work on the car was quickly completed. Nana and the fitter took a test run, and all was well again. Nana asked the fitter for the cost of the job, which we thought was going to be monstrous for the amount of work he had done and the time involved. He thought for a moment and finally replied, 3,500 CDs. Are you sure? I asked. I didn't see how it could cost so little. The cost was the equivalent of $8 for all of that work. Tommy, our guide, started shouting at the fitter, "It's too much money. You are cheating these people. Calm down, we told him. It's all right, and we want to pay him what he is asking. Ain't no way in New York City we could have had anything done to our car for that kind of money. Besides, we had just come home and we had it like that. We had a little extra cash, and it really wasn't a lot of money to us. Plus, we were extremely grateful. Tommy still didn't like it, but what could he do? Finally, he just thanked the fitter Infante on our behalf, and we were on our way again.